Welcome back to None of the Above. In 1996, two powerful female creatives set out to create what would go on to become one of the most groundbreaking shows on television. It gave audiences all over the country a fresh take on everything from top news, entertainment. It even put a bit of an emphasis on human interest stories rather than just current events. It soon changed the way Americans consumed political news. Now, the Emmy Award-winning program The Daily Show is celebrating its 25th anniversary. And to commemorate this huge occasion, the original creators and correspondents are all coming together for an epic reunion to retell how the show all came about. Joining us now to talk much more about all this is one of the co-creators herself, the one and only Lizz Winstead. Liz, great to have you here on Cheddar News. As always, congratulations, you're on 25 years. Is the show today, 25 years later, I'm curious, still more or less how you and your colleagues envisioned it when the whole thing began in 1996?
You know, I think it's hard to think about how you could envision how a show is going to be on the air for 25 years. But I think the one thing that it definitely did was we launched the show in a specific media landscape, right? It was kind of before there was an implosion of cable news. It was before YouTube. It was before Google. There was like local news and there was a CNN and that was kind of it, right? And so what the show did was it kept following the trajectory of how media responded to the world. It lived up to the promise of poking holes in the powerful's arguments and behaviors. And I feel like the foundation that we laid is definitely still there. And it really allowed John and now Trevor to come into like almost like we built this great foundation in this great house and they could go in and redecorate it any way they wanted without having to rip stuff out or, you know, put in new plumbing. So that part feels really good.
And absolutely has evolved. Amazing to think back then it was largely CNN in the cable news landscape. I mean, now you throw a stone proverbially and you'll hit a dozen or so that now Trevor Noah and his amazing correspondents get to tackle every night. When do you think is The Daily Show at its best? What types of stories, the types of guests, the types of angles, how it holds truth to power? When is the show really operating at its best?
I think the show's operating at its best when it can break down for people who feel overwhelmed by big events, a way that makes it palatable, makes it funny, makes you feel like when you feel confused and freaked out about the news, that you're not alone in it because they're hitting that space for you. Where you hear your own thoughts, I think that's when it's its best. And when it does say to you, you know, maybe don't believe every story you hear, do some of your own digging, find some of your own thoughts and opinions. And I think that when it inspires people to dig deeper, that's when it's really doing its job.
Liz, do you have a favorite moment? This may be an absolutely impossible question for you here, my friend. A favorite moment, possibly from the last 25 years. What stands out to you?
Oh my gosh. Favorite moments are so hard to come by, but I think my favorite moments are the fact that Brian Unger, A. Whitney Brown, and myself created team coverage and really went in hard on establishing what it meant to be a Daily Show correspondent and laying that groundwork and going out to whether it was you know, the political debates, or whether it was the Westminster Dog Show, or whether it was, you know, interviewing Donald Trump on the beaches in the Hamptons for the Model Olympics. You know, it just setting that tone and really watching the show itself become an actual news organization, a comedy show that was actually a news organization, and watching it, just being part of all of that, I think is like, it's not really a favorite moment, but it was just my favorite thing to watch a new genre of comedy emerge, really.
Let's talk about the correspondents for a second, because you mentioned there, Brian, and a few of the others that you launched the show with all those years ago. And of course, since then, Liz, there have been correspondents on The Daily Show who largely have gotten their start into some one degree or another. Of course, they had been comedians for many years, but you think of the years of Colbert and Carell and John Oliver and Rob Riggle and so many others, and Samantha Bee. I mean, so many fan favorites went on then to become epic A-list stars in the world of comedy. Is that a surprise to you that this thing that you and your colleagues created then became a vehicle for some of the most legendary names in the modern world of comedy?
Well, I think what was so great about it was that, one of the things that was a challenge for Madeline and I was the network really wanted the show to be more like Entertainment Tonight and be sort of like a snarky pop culture show. And we fought really hard against that because we wanted to have celebrities be on the show, and we wanted it to be a vehicle where you could be funny and smart and show a range. And I think that the fact that we fought against the network instinct allowed for all of those people you just mentioned to come onto a show and be really proud and really dig deep into these characters to really show their acting chops and the range with which they could develop a character. I'm not surprised at all. The one thing I'm surprised, I guess, about most is that you don't have 25 years of a satirical news show unless you have 25 years of news media that constantly steps in it. So I think that for the media, the actual media, to step in it so profoundly that this show gets to exist and live and thrive is sad, but also great for comedy.
Sure. I feel as if sometimes perhaps there are parts of the show, for good or for bad, kind of write themselves when you turn on cable news and you say, really? Really? That's your best take? That's what you're going to go with? All right. That makes things a bit easier for us.
You also say thank you for not having me have to do research.
Yeah, it just did the work for us virtually. Look, comedy has certainly evolved. Comedians now on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, amazing comedians make content. I'm curious, what does Lizz Winstead watch out there? What do you see out there that gives you hope? What do you find yourself watching in today's comedy landscape?
I mean, everything that you mentioned, Sam B and John Oliver. I love the Black Lady sketch show on HBO. I love Wyatt Cenac's stuff. I love W. Kamau Bell on CNN. I love watching folks bring their own true selves to examining the world we live in and challenging it and asking other people to challenge it using humor. I love it all. I also love Riverdale. So, I can go both ways. I like a teen drama, and I love me some people who are really exposing the hypocrites for in ways that are really fun and interesting.
Yeah, well, I cover politics for a living here in D.C. There's no shortage of hypocrites. I will absolutely admit that. I finally do want to end with this. Proceeds from this big anniversary show, they're going to go largely towards your foundation, Abortion Access Front. The last time you and I spoke a few years ago, this has always been such an issue that's so important for you. Give me your concerns about the future of the abortion conversation, and why is that going to be such a point of focus for the 25th anniversary?
The reason is because this year the Supreme Court has decided to take a case that could possibly overturn Roe v. Wade, our federally protected right to access abortion, and more than likely it will. And so to raise awareness for folks around what happens next, what that means for bodily autonomy is going to be hugely important. And I really want people to be able to understand that. And so these lovely folks that have come together to celebrate The Daily Show also are very mindful of that, and we want to raise as much money as we can so that we can raise as much awareness as we can and get people activated to think about where we're heading in the future, especially when it comes to reproductive health rights and justice.
25 years. Congratulations on all the success, on everything that you and your colleagues have built, and best of luck to another 25 and beyond. The one and only Lizz Winstead. Great to have you here as always. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.